Hello everyone, welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Chris Pajak, that's Josh Williams. We're making Florian Wirtz content, because why wouldn't we be? I'm just going to say Wirtz because I can't do it, and I sound weird trying to. So yeah, we're going to be doing a grown-up show on Florian Wirtz.
You sure?
From an angle. Well, okay, Josh is going to be doing a grown-up show on Florian Wirtz, while I just am here for hosting. You put together a great show, actually, and it's completely different to anything else that's out there, I think, as well, in terms of the main topic of the show, Josh. So yeah, go through it then. You've found something that you think no one else has spoken about. Yeah,
well, it's a little bit of a different one this week. I feel like I've spoke a ton about Wirtz over the past few weeks. I think it's like 3 weeks running now, isn't it? Or 3 or 4 weeks running where we've known that he's apparently signing, but nothing has actually happened. So we're getting to a point now where everyone knows like the bird's eye view of the player. So I think we can start delving into specifics about his game, and there's one specific element to what he does that I think is really interesting and something that makes him really unique, I think, compared to a lot of his peers in similar positions, similar spots. And it's not like groundbreaking, but it does definitely make him different, and I'll capture how it makes him different during the show. But there's this concept of usage rate. Bear with me on this. I don't usually go down these little
side alleys.
Yeah. These mad little stats, throwing all mad stats.
Usage rate.
Did you know what that was before you saw the agenda?
No.
So usage rate in basketball, it's a basketball thing really, and so like for example, LeBron James's usage rate is the percentage of team possessions he uses when he's on the court. So it basically, if you think of like a team's possession as like a pie chart, how much of the pie does each player have? And naturally, someone like a Van Dijk will have the biggest slice because he plays in defence, he sees most of the ball, and usually the further forward you get up the pitch, the less players touch the ball because it's harder to get the ball in.
And that's a perfect example with last season's champions Liverpool side, isn't it? The centre forward doesn't touch the ball hardly at all. And you can say the same about Manchester City with Erling Haaland. Yeah,
exactly. So that's generally how it goes. That's the general rule of thumb. It's relatively easy to work out when it comes to a football team, versus basketball. As in, you just look at how many touches Liverpool would average over the course of a game, and then you look at each player in the team's per 90 stats for touches, and you work out the percentage that way. So just for it sounds a little bit complicated, it's really not. So to provide a bit of perspective, let's use the first viz. So that is the usage rate for Liverpool this season. No surprises at all as far as I'm concerned. So you can see Van Dijk at the top. He uses about 13% of Liverpool's possessions, Liverpool's touches. Then you've got Trent, then you've got Konate, and you've got Robertson, literally the back four. And the player at the opposite end is Núñez. We know Núñez is not a possession player. We've said that many times on this show. And you'll see generally around them, maybe you'd exclude Alisson, he's surrounded by forwards, Gakpo, Diaz, Jota.
Yeah, take the two goalkeepers out.
Yeah, I didn't realise Kelleher was in there actually. But that's generally how it works, and most teams would be set up that way. You can see Salah has got the most Liverpool possessions for the forwards in the team, you might say, with about 6-7%. Szoboszlai a little bit more, maybe about 8.5% or something like that. But generally speaking, that's how it works. So if we move on to Leverkusen, the next one, you can see there where Florian Wirtz is. Now, it's not like outrageous compared to his teammates, because the bottom line is Granit Xhaka touches the ball the most for Leverkusen. Alex Garcia plays in midfield. Palacios plays in midfield. But Wirtz is far ahead of like the players who you would associate as attackers with him, like Schick, Teller, Boniface, even Frimpong. And he's ahead of centre-halves.
Yeah,
I think that's what's mad.
Tar's the next name on the list.
Yeah, that's what's mad. The fact he's ahead of centre half. Mukiele is a defender. Tapsoba is a centre half. So Wirtz is getting on the ball more than they are. I think his usage rate, percentage-wise, I think he sees about 10.8% of Leverkusen's possession, despite being a really high player on the pitch, which, would you agree that that's very different? You don't usually see that.
Yeah, it's very strange, isn't it? Obviously, Leverkusen's formation may play into that as well. Just the fact that Granit Xhaka is their number one is quite strange in some situations, isn't it? So I think that's really interesting, and it's for me, it's a tell on what type of a player he is and what the other players think of him.
Yeah,
that he's so high up the pitch, can find space, and is used by his players and trusted for him to move them forwards.
Yeah, well, we mentioned his ability to find space on a recent show, and I do think it's one of his biggest perks. I think you need to let him roam and let him occupy those pockets, and his teammates will find them. Got one more viz here just to illustrate what I'm talking about. This is probably the most relatable viz, I would assume, but this is just number of touches per 90, and I've put Wirtz in with just a load of players who are just vaguely relevant. So some players in similar positions, some players who are moving this summer. All of Liverpool's midfielders are in there. Players who are popular in the news and things like that. That's just how he compares to a lot of them, and you can see he's like on his own at the top with like over 80 touches per 90, in the Bundesliga this season, which is daft for a player who plays really high. Look at Gravenberch. Gravenberch's on there as Liverpool's holding midfielder, deep lying 6 for a possession dominant team like Liverpool, and Gravenberch is averaging, what's that there, about 65 touches per 90. Wirtz is on 80.
Where's Szoboszlai on there, Josh?
Szoboszlai is on probably about 58, 57 touches per 90. So he's
probably maybe an extra 33% on top of Szoboszlai's in a similar position, you would imagine, for Liverpool.
Yeah, Martin Odegaard gets on the ball a ton for Arsenal. I thought Odegaard would be more in touch with him than he is, but Odegaard is kind of on a different planet. He's on about maybe 65 touches per 90. Wirtz is up at 80. Bruno Fernandes is an interesting player in this sense because he has always been a really dominant player for Man United to the extent that he basically just does it all himself. The all pass to him, he takes a lot of shots, creates a lot of chances. It's like his ball. It's like that kid in the schoolyard who
we've all played with them.
Exactly, yeah. But you do get players like that. I think Coutinho kind of became that at the end of his time at Liverpool, where he's just like a magnet for the ball. Everyone just gives the ball to Coutinho. I think Jürgen said that, didn't he, when he left? He said, like, we reached the point where it was kind of just give the ball to Phil. When he left, we had to find our own way with more of a collective approach to it. And Bruno Fernandes, by the way, has played a lot in deeper areas under Ruben Amorim. Wirtz plays higher than Bruno Fernandes this season and still seeing a bit more of the ball than him.
And we've seen that in the last 2 games in international football as well.
Yeah.
Wirtz, obviously the semi-final against Portugal, on the ball a lot, man of the match in that game. It's just something that he seems to be a bit of a magnet for the football, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think the ultimate example of what I'm talking about, these kind of high usage players, high volume passers, if you want, is probably Lionel Messi. He reached that point at Barcelona where he's just, everyone's passing to him, he's constantly an option, and he takes a lot of shots, creates a lot of chances, and he just basically dominates your attack. So if you think of it as a pie again, Messi's having a big chunk of the pie, basically. So I had to look at Messi's last 7 seasons or something like that. Going back to 17-18, it was. We can't go further back than that. So from 17-18 until now, and the most touches Messi's averaged in any season per 90, I think was 84. And his highest usage rate as a percentage of his team was 10%. Wirtz this season, 10.8% for Leverkusen. So even more involved than Messi at his absolute peak at Barcelona, really. Which again is some going. And another example that I'll throw in there we all know Roberto Firmino touched the ball quite a lot for a forward at Liverpool, false nine and all that, dropping into midfield and stuff. Firmino's most touches in any season for Liverpool in the Premier League was 60.4 per 90 in 21-22 season. Again, Wirtz is on over 80, 2 seasons on the bounce now. Firmino's best was 60. So what I'm getting at here, this doesn't mean he's amazing. What I'm getting at here is, that's a very unique quality, that. And, you know, how do you involve a player like that? How do you tactically accommodate a player like that? Because he's quite clearly, I don't want to say, I think greedy is definitely the wrong word, but I'm trying to look for a word. Dominance is a word that keeps coming to mind, as in, like, when you've got possession, he is a dominant player, you know he's on the pitch. Again, greedy's the wrong word, but just someone who is a magnet, someone who will get involved a lot, and you have to accommodate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, we're gonna look at the sort of tactical stuff in the next show on Plus straight after this one. So you can go over there and you can sign up, and we'll be live about 10 minutes after this show ends. But we've got some other bits and pieces that we want to talk about in this show as well. So, you know, a player that's been mentioned in the same lines as Florian Wirtz is Cherki at the moment. Obviously, just signed for Manchester City. Josh, I think there's a reason that both Liverpool and Manchester City had Florian Wirtz as their number one target. There's a reason that Manchester City pulled out of the Wirtz deal, and that was because he wanted to go to Liverpool. Yeah. Otherwise, he'd have been another one. This isn't to say that Cherki's not going to be a good signing. I think he is going to be a good signing. I think he's a really good player. I just don't think he's the player that they exactly wanted. Where do you sit on the two of them in a comparison?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think on the ball, there's not a lot that separates them, if I'm honest. If we get up to third viz, the one that you've just used, yeah. So if you see where Cherki is on that, Cherki is another who I would label as like a high usage attacking player. Plays high up, but sees a lot of the ball, lots of touches, and he is extremely creative, very, very progressive. You know, a real master at moving the ball forward, getting you into the penalty box, you know, transporting the team from A to B, that sort of thing. He's very, very good at that. So on the ball, there's not a great deal of difference, I don't think. I think the big gaps between them, and the reason City and Liverpool both wanted Wirtz first and then Cherki is the fallback option, is because Cherki has quite a few red flags attached to his profile. Wirtz has virtually none. Like, for example, Cherki has been labelled as a bit of a disruptive character at Lyon. That's why he's available for a cut price. That's why nobody yet has poached him from there, despite his potential. He's also, he doesn't defend. You know, he's got no interest in defending. You have to carry him a little bit. He's a bit, I think lazy is quite harsh, but Pep will absolutely have to convince him to defend. And I wouldn't be surprised if he only gets used kind of at home against the weaker sides initially, until maybe further down the line he starts getting to grips with the fact that he will run, you know. So I think he's a brilliant key to the door, but won't work for you. Could be a tricky character to work with, based purely on rumours. And he's not the most athletic. You know, he's not fast. He's a bit like, I compared them on my podcast a few weeks ago to potentially like Sancho. You know, when Sancho at Dortmund, it worked, but then he comes to England and he just looks really slow, I felt. He just suddenly looks like he can't beat a man, and if he does beat a fullback, the fullback's back behind the ball again, because he's just not quick enough to kill them. So Cherki's a bit like that. Wirtz, I think, is a bit more direct than him, probably a bit quicker than him, certainly more athletic than him. Definitely works a lot harder on the defensive end with his intensity and things like that. And when it comes to his character, just only green flags based on reports. You know, he's apparently got a bit of spike about him as well, where he gets involved in the odd little scrap and things like that, but a needle to him, which we like. So that's probably the big difference between the pair of them. But on the ball, not a great deal of difference. So Liverpool are paying a lot more, but City are getting all the red flags. So it depends what way you want to go there.
Both high ceilings, of course.
Yeah.
Probably a lower floor for Wirtz.
Say it again.
A lower floor for Wirtz. A higher floor for Wirtz.
Much higher floor. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I think the floor for Shaky is pretty low because he can have days where he just doesn't want to play.
Well, let's have a look at some of their stats now. You can see on my screen, just a quick FB ref. Florian Wirtz is in the blue, Shaky's in the red. Very similar profiles for attacking midfielders. I've used this on, Josh.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, Shaky comes off slightly better off in a lot of the categories, certainly in assists and expected assists, non-penalty expected goals and expected assisted goals, shot creating actions. I think this is where the City fans are sort of focusing in on. Well, look, we're spending 35 million quid on this and you're spending 150, they're the same player. But as you mentioned, what's not shown in there is all the other side of the game. That's not based in numbers and stuff, is it? But I do think it's quite an interesting one because there is this sort of French stats versus German stats versus Premier League stats, Portuguese stats, etc., and that plays into it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, if City fans are using that sort of thing, like to a certain extent, they are right. Like what I've just said then about in possession, there's not that much difference between them. They're both just really, really special on the ball. Shaky, I would argue, is potentially more technically gifted than Wirtz. Shaky technically is a joke, honestly. Like both feet are flawless, and it's just really technically special. But you get a lot of red flags with them. That's the thing. That's what Liverpool. So the red flags on there are not really visual. I mean, you can see, I suppose, the clearances and the blocks. Yeah, I think it's the blocks actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it's blocks, tackles, and interceptions as well.
You can
percentage
see,
dribblers tackles.
Yeah, percentage. But what we don't see there is pressing numbers. Like pressing numbers are not publicly available. But if you could see them, Wirtz presses a lot more than Shaky does. And as I said before, like the character profile, it's a little bit difficult because you don't really know. And bottom line is, Shaky's like 23 or something, so he could mature in the next few years or whatever. But just up until now, like, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yes.
I think I don't want to get libeled here or whatever, but I think like the Lyon chairman or somebody like high up at Lyon basically just labelled Shaky as a dickhead. Like that exact word. I'll get that up in a second.
Was that your swearing? Dickhead?
Well, it's I just wanted to be clear, you know what I mean? I wanted to be careful, like, but I could come up with a lot of words if you want me to.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. People like the fact that you don't swear. So that's absolutely fine. Well, I'll tell you what then, let's look at
sorry, it wasn't dickhead. It was arsehole.
Oh, wow.
A little arsehole, he called him.
A little arsehole.
By the Lyon owner.
Love that.
So there's got to be got to be something in there.
Love that. Talking about the out of possession stuff, Florian Wirtz, let's get up the next graphic actually, because this is possession 1 in the final third. Obviously we said that he's a good presser and stuff like that, didn't we? You can see the areas of which he does his pressing. It's still largely based around that left hand side and stuff. But in terms of high turnovers, he's averaged 1.25 high turnovers per 90 in all comps in 24-25. That was the most among Bundesliga players. And over the last 2 seasons, Wirtz has won possession in the final third at least 15 times more than any other player. So that's 71. And you can see on the next graphic there, that is him topping the Bundesliga in terms of possession won in the final third. So yeah, again, another side to Wirtz's game there that hasn't really been explored too much, other than a lot of people say he's good at it. There's the stats to sort of back it up that I've nicked from Opta there, which is nice. Obviously, we're going to talk about how we're going to get into it tactically and stuff, but the possession, winning the possession back is such a big part for this Liverpool side as well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I like to think Liverpool potentially like post Trent and possibly post Salah eventually, because Salah's probably the one player with the licence that he doesn't have to defend. But Liverpool, I think, really do need to prioritise the collective. And I just love that Wirtz, despite being so good, like he's genuinely good enough to be presented with a licence to do what he wants, really. But he doesn't. He wants to work. And when I had a look when I said about pressing numbers before, they're not publicly available. For some reason, the Bundesliga do provide you with physical numbers, which is quite rare. Wirtz is that's only one. Wirtz is 8th in the Bundesliga this season for sprints. 865 of them, and some of the players ahead of him.
Who was number 1?
Number 1 now is Riddle Baku, who is an absolute sprinter for RB Leipzig. But number 2 is Frimpong, for a bit of perspective. Number 7 is Benjamin Sesko. So these are all athletic, want to cover a lot of ground and that. And another thing that I think is mad is Wirtz is 2nd in the Bundesliga for duels won.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that's specifically... When you think of duels, I think of tackles, personally. I don't think it's technically that. I think it's just kind of like... Just basically battles with the opposition, including when you've got the ball. So if he dribbles past you, that's a duel won. I think is how they do it. But it will include off-the-ball stuff. But for Wirtz to be top of the division, or 2nd in the division, for duels won on 383, it just paints this picture of a player who is... essentially the complete package, doesn't really fall down in any department, and that includes defensive stuff, it includes character stuff. By all accounts, he's a bit of a leader nowadays for Leverkusen. There's no fallbacks really.
There isn't. I think over the last sort of couple of weeks we've done a lot of content around Wirtz, haven't we? We did a show last week that looked at how Liverpool would set up with Frimpong, with Kerkez and with Wirtz, as well as potentially a centre forward signing. That one's on Redmen Plus. That's available now. We did that one last week. It's a really, really good show. You should check that one out. The show that we're doing next on Plus is actually around what it means more specifically for the attack. Sort of with what we know, from the last few weeks and what we've managed to uncover in terms of the stuff that you've worked through today, some other little bits and pieces that I've found, new information as well. We're going to take a look at what it could mean for Salah, what it could mean for Gakpo, Wirtz and Szoboszlai, those types of players. So that'll be really interesting. So get yourself signed up at redmenplus.com, because this guy, Josh, it's not just goals, it's not just assists, it's not just, finding space, it's not dribbles, it's winning the ball back. It's everything, isn't it? Yeah.
I think you're doing this player a disservice by focusing solely on his goals and assists. But because he's had so many of them over the past 2 seasons, I think it's 41 non-penalty in the Bundesliga. You are inclined to focus on that because that's really good. That's a brilliant return for a player in his spot. But as I said, you're doing a disservice by focusing solely on that, because there's so much more to unpack with his game.
One way to sum him up.
Unicorn. We'll go with that one. It's on the agenda, I think so.
I was surprised it took you that long, to be honest. I was thinking unicorn.
I was thinking of something else, but...
Unicorn.
Have you got one
describes it perfectly. No. Unless I just nick Bakehouse boxings, and that's complete.
Another one is polymath.
Okay. What the hell does that mean?
Google it.
Polymath. Right now?
Well, you don't have to do it right now, but for anyone who's wondering,
type of thing, or
pretty much someone who's an expert.
Okay.
Across multiple different fields.
An individual with extensive knowledge across many different subjects, often drawing on complex bodies of knowledge to solve problems. I'm glad you went with unicorn.
Yeah. I like that one as well, though.
It's a good word.
Yeah, it is a good word. It's a different one, isn't it?
It is. So we're going to go over to Plus now. We're going to take a look at that. Join us. You can either get it on a Redmen Plus video subscription on YouTube or redmenplus.com. Thank you very much, and we'll see you shortly. Ta-ra.